Our text tonight is written in chapter 26 of St. Matthew's Gospel. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, "Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." We join hands with the whole Christian church on earth this day as we turn in at the door of an apartment building somewhere in the city of Jerusalem. We climb the stairs to a small garret up under the roof, and the sound of familiar voices greets our ears as we look in upon a scene that has captured the imagination of the church for 2,000 years. It is the Last Supper, where Christ and his friends have gathered together one last time before the storm breaks over the heads of them all. It was the occasion of Passover, a meal in memory of God's great deliverance of his people long centuries before. And the table was laden with typical Passover fare. There was the wine of thanksgiving, the unleavened bread and the bitter herbs, reminders of the haste with which their fathers had left the land that night, and of the bitterness of their bondage in the land of Egypt. And of course there was the lamb roasting upon a spit, for it was by the shed blood of the lamb that their lives were spared that unforgettable night so long ago. But it will help you here if you remember that the Lord's Supper is precisely that, a supper. And you know what a supper is. Take a man who is tired, and because he's tired, he's cranky and irritable, and set that man down to a good meal of food and drink. And the chances are his bad humor will pass. He will become his old self again, companionable and unselfish. Why is that? Because the strength that was in the man, in the food, was ingested by the man himself and became his strength and made him a better and a stronger person. Food answers the cravings of our bodies as they hunger and thirst and refuels us. But it's more than that. When we eat together, we are also reviving our relationship for one another. For ours is a need not only for food and drink, but for each other, to fill the emptiness in our lives with companionship and fellowship. It's no accident that people who are falling in love like to eat and dine out together. And it's no surprise when widows and widowers tell us what a staggering blow it is to prepare a meal for oneself and then eat it all alone. And everybody knew that something had gone terribly wrong when the man David no longer showed up at the dinner table of King Saul, where he was supposed to be. It is a commentary on our times that our families rarely sit down for supper together. The parents working different shifts, and the children absent for one social or school activity or another. You see, breaking bread together keeps us human. Did you ever notice how hard it is to put on airs and act a big shot when you're passing the gravy and the potatoes at the same time? And the one next to you knocks the milk over, and you got crumbs of cake on your chin and don't even know it. It is a testimony to the personality of Christ that he was so frequently a guest in somebody's house for dinner. And I mean in places that would have been awkward and uncomfortable for us. We remember his first miracle partly because he was a guest at the wedding in Canaan, when the young couple, much to their embarrassment, ran out of refreshments at their own wedding reception. Jesus did not hesitate to eat and drink in the house of Levi, the hated tax collector, and his cronies, or in the house of Simon the Pharisee, where the atmosphere was so cold and formal, I would have declined the invitation. And Jesus always brought something to the party. And his hands were always open to give more than he ever got. Invited into the home of the big fisherman, he first healed the man's mother-in-law who lay stricken with a fever. And then they could sit down to eat. What an enormous table he spread out there in the wilderness for the thousands who had poured out to hear him. It was a joy for the little home in Bethany, for Mary and Martha and Lazarus, who always had a light in the window to welcome Jesus and his friends. And the two people of Emmaus did not recognize the stranger at their table till he blessed the bread and broke it as they had seen Jesus so often do. Now, all that which Christ offers is intensified and emphasized in the Last Supper in the upper room. The events of that evening seemed to be going from bad to worse. The meal started off on a sour note when the disciples trooped into that room like angry schoolboys, upset with each other because they had quarreled over the question, who is the greatest among us? And so they had no eyes to see the water pitcher or the basin put there for their use. Now, to people in such an ugly mood, even Christ cannot give the things he has to offer. So first, he gets up from the table, girding a towel around his waist, and kneeling before each one of his friends in turn, bathes the feet of every one of the disciples. You call me Lord and Master, and you say, well, for so I am, he told them. But if I, your Master and Lord, have bathed your feet, so much more ought you to wash one another's feet, for I have given you an example. You should do as I have done for you. And then there was that stunning announcement at the table. One of you shall betray me. A remark that caught them completely off guard. So sure was every one of the other's loyalty that each guy thought, if this deed is going to be done, I must be the one that's going to do it. In faltering voices around that table, they asked, Lord, is it I? It was as though a mantle of darkness had descended upon the dining chamber. They felt that somehow everything's collapsing and caving in on us. It finally dawned on them, see, that they'd come to the end of the road together. The gallant adventure they'd shared together for so many years. And yet it was Jesus who tried to rally their spirits, who heaped up one consolation after another for them. In this world you shall have sorrow, he said, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome this world. And then Jesus spoke the most familiar words and most frequently repeated in our Christian religion, except perhaps for the Lord's Prayer. He took the bread, blessed it, broke it, gave it to them, and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me." And after the same manner also he took the cup when he had supped, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "All of you drink of it. This cup is my blood shed for you for the remission of sins." Don't you see? The old covenant was now passing away. And that Old Testament had served his people long and had served them well. But now the new covenant had come. God's Son instead of the Lamb. The reality instead of the symbol. And the person instead of the picture. Many people come to the end of the line with their fists clenched in anger, or tightly fisted in an unwillingness to let go. Jesus comes to the end of the line and gives them all that he has, gives them all that he is, gives them himself. The Bible calls our condition hunger and thirst. Ever yearning, always longing, looking for something, wanting something, tasting this, trying that, sampling something else. As we grow listless, trying to live on junk food and tasting salt water, which only makes us thirstier. Christ claims that he can answer the hungers of your heart and satisfy the longings of the human spirit. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Christ comes to us in this supper, unites with us, becomes one with us in a way that I cannot explain to you. But Christ literally feeds us, strengthens us, does for us what food does for us. He imparts his strength to us, which we can ingest. And it becomes our strength, enabling us to be and to do what we could never be or do apart from him. Christ revives our spirits, warming our blood and gladdening our hearts the way wine does. Now you can live without the fancy entrees and all the extra desserts, but we cannot live without Christ, as the branch cannot live without the vine, as the body cannot live without the bread of life. The old prayer reminds us that all you need is an appetite for what Christ has to offer. But if you're angry and upset with each other, if your minds are anxious and distracted, how can you appear at this table as brothers and sisters? How can we ever be sons and daughters of God? The prayer says, "The eyes of all wait upon thee, O Lord, and thou givest them their food in due season. Thou openest thine hand and satisfiest the desire of every living thing." That's what the open hands of Christ are offering you. "He that cometh unto me shall never hunger, and he that believeth in me shall never thirst. Amen.